Batman vs. Superman is just terrible. I mean, flat out, it's just a really bad film. In today's video, we're going to be diving into why it's such a bad movie. Before we go any further, spoilers are imminent, but luckily this movie is so bad that I don't think you should have any want to watch it. But still, spoilers are in effect beyond this point, so there you go. That's your warning. Batman vs. Superman is a pretty difficult film to analyze because there's a large number of things rather than just one or two that went wrong with it. So I'm going to split this into three different parts. Part 1, titular issues and character issues. Part 2, is there even a frickin' protagonist? And Part 3, a lack of goals. So the first thing I heard about this movie whenever it came out is Batman and Superman fight for like 5 minutes and that's it. Okay, so the issue with this is this. The audience specifically expected the plot of the film to be based around a rivalry between Batman and Superman, and what we got is a shame to DC on so many levels. Because whenever you take a concept that has potential for a large number of people to enjoy, and then use it as a quote-unquote clickbait kind of scam, what you're going to get is a bunch of angry audience members, naturally and rightfully so. Let me explain. Essentially, if the title specifically says Batman vs. Superman, you would think that the plot would be based around it and follow an epic build-up between two heroes, but alas, we got a plot where it's really kind of technically Batman vs. Superman, but we only get about 5 minutes of what's really just an action sequence that's used to justify the title of the movie. In other words, we don't get a setup that's necessary for the plot, so we kind of are just dragged along. Now, the concept is good and the plot is good, but the film is not well put together. Now, character issues. Batman is not a mechanical mite. He's not supposed to be a robot. I mean, sure, he uses tools to do stuff, but if you look up Batman vs. Superman Batman, you'll come up with something that looks like it came straight from RoboCop or Star Trek, and that's not a joke. Batman in this movie isn't really the character that we all came to see. He's just this $1 million robot that makes absolutely no sense. The reason why superhero movies tend to do so well is really 3 reasons. A, these characters have been established for so long, we have a good idea of what works and what doesn't. B, the authors of various comic books and cartoons have had a chance to really experiment and establish what these characters stand for. So you're pretty much set up for how your character is going to be. And C, more people know about these superheroes than a lot of other things because superheroes appear in various forms of media. But rather than taking advantage of the extreme success enjoyed by The Dark Knight Rises several years prior and use the cool technology and costumes that people spend hundreds of hours and millions of dollars to develop, director Zack Snyder takes a quote-unquote new approach, destroying the excellent work of Christopher Nolan, the director of the Dark Knight trilogy, in favor of a stupid sci-fi thriller that took the bat symbolism out of Batman and the man out of the beloved Bruce Wayne in favor of a dumbass, useless robot with little character and a lame presence that lacks depth and meaning. Comment down below right now, have you ever tried tea, and what's your favorite kind of tea? Because I'm just like sipping away at my tea right now as I'm drinking. I'm drinking Big Low Constant Comment. Alright, anyway, this is not an ASMR channel, let's get back on track. So, joke's on you, Batman. I mean, I know we should just call you vaguely bat robot shaped thing, but we're gonna use your actual name to inspire those around the world who are your legitimate fans to go out and blow $10 to watch you throw poison grenades, but somehow still get your ass whooped by a 40-year-old man wearing a Halloween costume. All jokes aside, though, it's pretty sad what's happening to DC at this point. Alright, moving to point number 2, is there even a frickin' protagonist? And the answer, obviously, to this is no. You see, the issue with films like this is that we don't really have a central protagonist or a central antagonist. For example, In the Avengers Assemble, the director kind of bent the rules of writing to offer us a more centralized antagonist in the form of Loki, and it worked out great because, as we know, with a film like Justice League or the Avengers Assemble, we can't really focus on a single protagonist because there's so many, unlike a novel, where we could have a series of novels that each introduce our protagonist separately, because there's an extended amount of information we can put into them, and then have a battle. But there's so many, so rather we shift over to focus on the antagonist. So it is possible that they could have focused on a main antagonist, which in this film is Lex Luthor, except he acts and looks nothing like Lex Luthor. Anyway, back to fake Batman. We don't really have a point in the film which gives us the slightest bit of clarity over who to root for. So we're stuck in a divided community of Batman fans against Superman fans, and that never turns out well. Things got really ugly in Batman vs. Superman, and so we get this gross, uncentralized piece of crap. If we made Batman the center of our story and it shows how Superman has grown to be more and more corrupt, then we can have an epic fight at the end. It's like the climax of good and evil, democracy versus tyranny, thoughtfulness and intellect versus raw power. Whenever we have action that doesn't really follow the plot, there's not really any stakes or anything for the audience to be concerned about. So I think that's the other thing that frustrated people. We wanted to see this tie into a plot. And this really leads back to a climax. There's nothing significant about the action we do see, finally, rather than just watching the media beat up on these two characters. So we're just kind of sitting there awkwardly in the theater waiting for something to happen that we can actually connect to, but that never happens in the film. And we don't get any of the last few things I've mentioned. Yet again, nothing. We're left to wonder why the hell these dudes are beating the living crap out of each other in the first place, and I mean, there's probably something in there that explains why these dudes are fighting, but there's nothing significant enough to reach out to the audience. And by the way, I'm calling these dudes because Batman barely acts like Batman, and Superman just seems kind of like weak and crumbly in this movie, and I know that's a weird way to put it, but like, that's really what he is, and Superman is supposed to be super. That's the best way to describe him. So there's not really any way we're able to connect to the character's motivation because there isn't one in the first place. And now for the third issue, we don't really have a goal we're trying to achieve. We're just stuck wondering why any of this is happening in the first place. There's also nothing in it for our protagonist, and I mean nothing. Like, why don't you guys set this out diplomatically? Why don't you be like, alright, I know that Batman is kind of taking my vigilante status, so how about we just work together now, or something like that. So there's not really a logical motivation behind it, and the audience can clearly dissolve any kind of attempt on the director to draw towards the audience. There's nothing in it for our protagonists, and Batman and Superman are just kind of there. Superman strives to expose Batman, but the conflict and tension isn't that high. It's just kind of like, okay, because we aren't really drawn to Batman or Superman. So while the idea of a conflict between the two of them is a really interesting concept, the director, Zack Snyder, has no idea what he's doing. He has a bunch of people working for him who have at least somewhat of an idea of what they're doing, but then this guy at the top, who's supposed to know everything that he's doing, he's controlling the DC universe, directing top-of-the-line movies. He doesn't have any budgetary concerns, so that can't, ever be an excuse. He fails to put anything into this movie. He doesn't put any elements that we want to see together. Anyway, I mean, that's pretty much all. I mean, it's a cool concept. Don't take me the wrong way, but it's not put together in a way that works out for the audience, and thus, Batman and Superman is a bad movie. Did you like my tea drinking ASMR? Do you want to hear more of that? Alright, thanks for watching today's video. See y'all later.